So if you're listening to the show, you might know that I have been going through shit lately. And this really made me think that I would love to offer my group program, the Urban Cleanse group program. But this time I am part of the group. I would like to go back to losing the weight that I gained these past couple of years. And I would like to feel better in my own skin. And I know a lot of you do too. And I do know that my program does work if I only did it myself. So if you'd like to join, please go on www.Organilicious.ch, click on the Urban Cleanse button and join us. It'll be loads of fun. We'll do it together. I will be your support, your knowledge, as well as your team member. I'm looking forward to see you there. Thanks a lot.
Welcome to the So Frickin Healthy podcast. I am today's guest, Shannon Sagawe, the Wealth Alchemist. The Wealth Alchemist is redefining wealth for women. In our collective quest for wealth, I feel it's important to establish a broader, more inclusive definition that includes mental health, physical health, planetary health, community health, as well as traditional financial health. My definition of wealth is having access, freedom, and resources to pursue your dreams, invest in your health, spend time with loved ones, and enjoy the beauty of this amazing planet.
Oh God, help us.
Are we ready to start?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So I was trying to think of something super interesting to ask you this morning, and I'm just I couldn't come up with anything. Is there what's in the last week been super interesting for you? Did you have an aha moment or something this week?
This past week is a blur. This past week was nonstop. I'm suffocating. You know what? I do have something nice to say about this week though. Something that I think is literally the first time that ever happened to me. And I didn't think I would enjoy such a thing. And I did. I met up with a friend. She's a lady who we're gonna...
Sorry. My mind immediately went to something sexual.
I'm happy to talk about that. I didn't know we were doing that. Let's keep that for another episode.
No, you can see it already. That's where I'm at. Oh, sorry. Okay, you were saying.
On the next episode of So Frickin Healthy, Danna and Megan talk about sex. Can't wait. I love that topic. No, so I met up with a friend who we're actually going to interview in a few weeks. She's super interesting and just the loveliest. Met up with her for lunch and she showed up with one single white rose for me. And I was like, I'm not big on flowers, to be fully honest. I'm like, meh, flowers. But the fact that she literally was walking to meet me and was like, flower shop, I'm going to get down a white rose, was it for me just kind of was so moving. And I was like, I love you. And obviously you love me because you thought about me on your way. I mean, yeah, she was meeting me, but still, she thought about me. And I was like, that is so gorgeous. Thank you so much. So yeah, that was kind of something that made me smile this week.
I want to be that person so badly that thinks of those things. And I am not. I'm horrible about thank you cards. I'm horrible about remembering birthdays or doing anything about it. So I think, and you're nodding your head, it looks like you're the same way. So I feel like for people like us, it's a mixed bag. It's oh my God, that's wonderful. And oh, I'm such a shit friend because I would have never done that.
That's so true. But you know what? That's funny that you bring that up because another conversation that I had with her was the fact that we don't know how to accept things without being immediately defensive or something like that. So I was telling her a story about, I have a good friend. She's been my friend for 20 years now. And she's in Israel. And once in a while we manage to catch up. And every single time she's like, Danna, I'm so proud of you. You came to a different country. You started this business. You're da-da-da-da-da. And she just jam packs me with positive kind of affirmations. And I always feel like I have to kind of be like, yeah, but I didn't have a choice because Switzerland and being a parent, you can't just start it, you can't have a job. So I'm constantly kind of fighting with accepting that something beautiful was just given to me, whether it was, words or physical things. So we were talking about that, and check out who's here.
Hello.
Hey, Shannon. How's it going?
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Hi, everyone. In this episode of So Frickin Healthy, we are joined by the Wealth Alchemist, Shannon Sagawe. Hi, Shannon. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's fun to be a guest for once.
Excellent. So I'm sure some of our listeners are wondering, Wealth Alchemist, didn't they mean health alchemists? So maybe maybe we could start off with telling us, why are you a guest on a health podcast? What does wealth have to do with our health?
Well, they say a healthy person has many goals and a sick person only one. So if you are sick or just unhealthy and you don't feel good in your body, you don't have energy, you don't have, some sort of a vivacity, which is not with us 24 hours a day, but should be a regular part of our life, then all the money in the world won't make you feel better. So my tagline with the Wealth Alchemist is yourself, your wealth, and your planet. And I don't believe you can have only one or two out of the three. And the yourself tagline is where we encompass health, mental health, physical health, community, because we're social beings and we need to feel belonging as well. If we don't feel belonging, again, that can impact your health. And it can certainly mean that all the money that you have, if nobody wants to be around you, is also useless. So for me, the three are, I'd say invisibly, but maybe not so invisibly aligned. They're a thread that runs through everything. And I just don't think it's like a three-legged stool. You cannot take out one of them. So
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
thank you.
So what got you into, like, what was the big shift, something that got you into the topic that we're, how did you become the Wealth Alchemist? And
that was actually quite an interesting process because I left banking and I was really, really, really fed up. And I worked for an American bank, Citigroup, for 14 years. And it's kind of where I grew up. And so it's all I knew. And it was very, very entrepreneurial within a very corporate setting. You had rails on. You couldn't, obviously, compliance rails, regulatory rails, but you could go get whatever clients you wanted to. And they encouraged you because they thought, whatever you're successful at. In fact, I met a guy early on in my career who went after widowed hairdressers. I was just so specific and he did really well. Maybe it wasn't just widowed. I think it was widowed and divorced hairdressers. It was so specific. And I thought, wow, okay. So I grew up in that system. And then I always loved venture capital. It's just in my blood. And then I left banking right before the financial crisis, went into venture capital fundraising. Loved it. Was the worst timing in the world, but I got a great look inside of a space that I'd always loved. Then we moved to Switzerland, had our third child. I kind of took a break. It was really heavy into the financial crisis. They closed the London office. And I kind of had to regroup and figure out who am I? And started a little business, which was fun, but it didn't fulfill me intellectually. And then I went back into banking in Switzerland. And that was just a shit show. I just never experienced just such chaos. It was just crazy. So I started with SocGen, and with literally about 3 weeks into my hire, if even that, they decided they're going to lay off 20% of the company. And they're still hiring for the UK desk. So they were building a brand new UK desk. So we were meant to look after UK clients, go bring in UK clients offshore. And they were firing people left, right, and center and announcing new hires. And people were working there for 20 years, 15 years, getting fired while new people were walking in the door. Then 9 months later, they're like, oh no, sorry, we waited too long to do this. We're in financial difficulty. We're going to cut the UK desk. The lack of strategy was astounding. We had the foresight to see this coming, and a group of us went and interviewed over at UBS. In the end, I'm the only one that went. Then I walked into a completely different situation. The turnover on that desk was unbelievable. And here's a tie-in to health specifically. My second desk head within about 4 months of me arriving, eventually, and then within 9 months of him taking over that job, had Überlastung auf Deutsch, burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And the turnover was awful. The mood was awful. It was so miserable, and you could feel it in your body. And it is a whole nother story, and it's outside the scope of this podcast. But eventually my market head, who was really anti me for reasons I can't even understand, but it is, finally said, you know what? I don't want you on the team anymore. You can stay at UBS, but you know, you're not going to be on the team anymore. And that's really was the first time in my entire life I've, experienced that. But once you go through that, especially having an entire desk cut in within like a 2-year period, then, you're like, okay, I can survive this. I can survive this. And then you think, well, what do I have to give? And I was thinking about writing a book. And then I thought, but book, and then still thinking about that, but it's stale, right? I want something that lived, and I want to inspire people, and I want people to live really good lives. And it's not all about money at all. But how do we get women empowered? And we have to deal with emotional baggage as well around money. But we also have to look at the health, because if you don't feel confident, if you don't feel positive about yourself, God, it's not worth living. So then I started the podcast, and after a year, I know I'm finally going to answer your question. You're regretting now having a podcast host as a guest. Circling back, I had been doing the podcast for about a year, but I was kind of all over the place a little bit. I had this goal to increase financial literacy and investment literacy, but I wasn't really telling people that. And I also was interviewing mostly only entrepreneurs, next generation entrepreneurs, the tomorrow's business, phenomenons, but I wasn't getting the message across. So I went out and I got some branding help from two lovely ladies, Joanne and Justine, from Brand Space here, nice, strong female team in Switzerland. And they worked with me, and we for months were going back and forth. And I was so against being honed into one thing. I'm like, I want my options. And so eventually one of them, I can't remember who, said, what about the Wealth Alchemist? Because you're taking all these things, all these aspects, and you're trying to build this and create something that's got more value than the individual parts.
Yeah.
So in a very long-winded way, that's the story.
And I really love that, because Megan and I went to the same health nutrition school where they talk about primary food and secondary food. And primary food is actually considered relationships, career, physical activity, also finance and stuff like that. That is the primary food that we're discussing. And so this is why we actually asked you on the podcast as well, because everything is intertwined. Everything at the end of the day, you can eat as healthy as you want, but if you have high stress levels, financial or not, you're not a healthy person, right? You're not managing your stress levels. Your body's probably inflamed. There's a lot to say about that. But at the end of the day, everything is intertwined. So I love that you also brought up, the guy who I guess you replaced, right? Who had the burnout, or did you replace him?
No, he was the second. By the time I left after 2 years, I was on a fourth desk head in 2 years. Okay. And he was number 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, that says a lot.
It was terrible. Yeah.
It says a lot about a company. I think that's why I probably never worked with corporate, but it also says a lot about, the actual job and how important it is for the company to notice their people's health, which I think is just now kind of starting to sprout here and there in certain companies, but a lot of companies still not necessarily.
And, basically when he came back, because they had to then have another desk head look after, and clearly he wasn't able to carry on with that role. And she needed headcount. So she put him into my role. And that was the, So he basically took over the relationship management or manager role. But to be honest, I knew I was actually so relieved in a weird way. It was of course I was horrified by the experience that I'd had over those 2 years dealing with the angriest clients, trying just to right the ship. Cause I was very senior. I had all this experience with all these young people around me, trying to kind of be the stable one, the positive one, and but boy, those, they say culture will kill any business strategy. And I realized none of my entrepreneurial positive, let's look after the client first. Let's all be a team. None of that matters if it's not in the culture. And I'm not saying all of UBS has that culture. I mean, you've got these silos, right? And some silos are really well run, very positive, good managers. And then there's others aren't. So you just can't eventually, but you know what? There's how many people are in these jobs that they hate, that make them sick.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. And we've got only so many years where we're fit and healthy. And yeah, so it was for me a great door closing. It was really a wonderful door to have closed.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious about what you offer right now to like how are you working with people? Like, I know you've got a podcast, and maybe you could explain a little bit more about the types of people that you see like looking for your help or asking for your help, and what do you do? What are your strategies, or how do you help people in this realm?
yeah, so at a very high level, my podcast is really the if you do nothing else but just listen to, I'd say probably about 70% of the podcasts that I do are a crystal ball into the future. So I'm bringing you tomorrow's revolutionaries. Now, whether or not that particular company is going to be the final winner isn't necessarily the point, but the space that they're in, the topics that they're covering, the problems that they're finding solutions for will give anybody listening a heads up and think, should I be adding, you know, smart mobility to my portfolio? Should I be adding plant-based meat ETF or cultured? Should I be looking out for cultured meat companies? Whether you do that with a fund or whether you actually go and buy Beyond Meat, and again, there's not a direct one for one. I interview this company who's doing cultured seafood, therefore you should go buy Beyond Meat. But I'm bringing you and talking about the mass amount of money that's flowing into these companies from the venture capital space. So I'm showing you the future a little bit. Venture capital is pouring money in the billions into this particular sector. You need to be aware of that. So that's just and then you get to hear a cool story, hopefully. That's the high level. Then I also make sure that in every conversation I'm talking and bringing in vocabulary that if you listen consistently will sort of Miyagi you into the financial conversation, like vocab. So in a natural way, like there's not a quiz, what's seed funding? What's a round of finance? What is growth capital? What is, I don't know, another venture capital term. What's an IPO? But we talk about these things in a natural way so that if you listen consistently over time, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I understand. I get that. And so that's another kind of underlying thing where I'm building confidence because we always talk about in a segment, the financial aspect of the company. Did you fund yourself? Did you borrow friends and family money? Did you, sweat equity? These kind of things. Then layering down is that during the pandemic, I decided just spontaneously to do teen stock market classes because we're all stuck at home with our kids. And I was originally like, well, what can I do? I can help my friends and help people take their kids away for 4 hours and teach them something, but give parents like some sanity. We were all inside the house. And it turns out I loved it. I loved teaching these kids. I made it fun. I talked about rags to riches stories. I made them each read out a rags to riches story, to talk about, Richard Branson and dyslexia, or another person who was a gas station attendant, saved up money, just a wide variety of things. So I do the teen classes, and then I added the women's fundamental courses. And again, this is a safe place for women to come. I do it online, and I'm starting to do it in person, and just be able to ask everything. We really go with the fundamentals on it. And so someone who's just afraid, just like, I want to learn, but I don't want to admit it, because she could be a PhD at ETH running an entire department, but nobody ever talked to her about investing terms. And so it's not about a lack of education formally. And so it's about, did your parents talk to you? Did you see your mom talking about these things? Did anybody explain to you why you need to do this young? The younger you do it, and this is now where my whole head is, I just don't want women to be vulnerable. So you can leave your job and raise your children, or you can go become a wildlife photographer, or you can go to a health retreat. You can go to a meditation, ashram for 6 months because you started investing at 18 years old.
Yeah.
So you don't have to buy into the more is better. You don't have to get into the lifestyle creep, which I was guilty of, which is why I'm so passionate about it. Nobody talked to me about that. I was great at making money. I was even better at spending it.
Yeah.
So all these things, it's like I've learned all these things, and I want to stop people from making that mistake. And then now I've added a coaching session, 3 sessions of coaching where it's one-on-one. We look at where you are, what are your holes, what are you afraid of, redefine risk for you, give you some tips, build a roadmap, talk about some exciting things in the future that maybe are relevant to you. And it's 3 sessions. So and then that person can either start implementing their own investment strategy or go to an advisor or whatever. And yeah.
That's super interesting to hear you talk about the topic is huge. It's one of those like under the surface of the water topics that nobody, religion, politics, money, right? Nobody really talks about it.
I mean, we weren't allowed to talk about money, I think generational, I don't know if it's generationally or just like we're kind of the first generation to start saying like, let's talk about money too. Right. I mean,
yeah,
terrible.
I grew up knowing nothing about I knew how to balance a checkbook and that was it. Right. Like I get my statement and I balance my checkbook, in the States, because we still have checks.
I know.
So, but as I got older, I got into the position where in my early 20s, I was working 3 jobs, paying only for my apartment and my car, and all my other bills were going to the wayside. And I got to the point where I was going to have to declare bankruptcy or make some big, moves. Right. And it was to that point where I'm like, crap, well, now what do I do? So, I did it myself at that point in time. Okay. I took a Dave Ramsey's financial peace class from my church, which was, the most important thing. And this is with health or wealth or whatever topic it is, the more attention you pay to it, the better you will become at it. So I feel like I just paid a lot more attention. I just saw what I was spending. I moved back in with my parents for 6 months. I did all the things I needed to do and I pounded it out. I'm just like, why couldn't I have just paid attention earlier? I wouldn't have been in this situation. It adds, of course, stress to your life. At that point, it was like, okay, where you actually have to move or you have to do something else. Fortunately, I didn't have to like sell my car or do some other things. But it was that going through that experience has now put me in the space of really managing my money in a way. Of course, when you move to Switzerland, typically, if you're working in the corporate industry in Switzerland, you don't really have to think about your money because you make more than you need really in life. So now I'm having to rethink and okay, let's just do a budget. I'm not a massive spender. I'm not a shoes and handbag girl. I'm a outdoor gear and kitchen shit. That's where I spend my money.
No matter what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm curious, like I still have people in my life, women who they have a financial advisor, but they still don't want to know. They don't want to learn. They're like, oh, I trust that person to like take care of my money. And I'm just like, but do you even understand what they're doing? Right. And, oh, I don't need to. That's why I have them doing it. And I'm just like, it's very frustrating when you meet another woman who doesn't really want to learn, and women, or just in general, anybody, but women especially, I feel, try to avoid the topic. Like, how do you approach that? Or like, what's like the first thing you can suggest to somebody like that in order to kind of light a fire under their ass to really want to understand and take care of their money?
Do you know, part of me is learning that you can't in a way that all that I can do, one thing you can do is you can scare people a little bit. And I'm willing to do that to a certain person, certain point, because I am generally a positive person, but I do believe women need to hear the numbers. And I try to say them regularly enough. Probably need to do a better job at like maybe making a sticky blog or something on my website. Women are so vulnerable financially in general, just because of the wage gap. If you have in your 40-year career maintained the 20% wage gap that exists, right? That's fact. You have to work 9 years longer than a man to retire with the same amount of money. And you did the same job. If you quit to have children for a little while, if you have to take care of elderly parents, it's so often that the woman does these things, and society doesn't yet value those roles. What's even scarier at the moment, and this is for, women need to pay attention to this. Gray divorce has doubled since 1990. That means divorce over 50.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask what gray divorce means. So, okay. So divorce over 50.
I know it's a little mean, right? I mean,
yeah.
50, is that gray? Maybe it is.
What if you color your hair?
Silver divorce, maybe.
I've got some gray, and I'm not yet even 50.
I know it is a little bit of a, we can find a better term. The divorce rate of over 50s, fabulous 50s, has doubled since 1990. And 40, let's see, where's my numbers on this? If you are a woman that gets divorced over 50, your average decline in your lifestyle drops by 43%, whereas the man drops by 26%. So it is actually more devastating for both a gray divorce versus if you do it in your 30s, which is actually apparently, I think the average age of divorce is around 35. That's the average age. And less people are actually in total getting divorced. I think because more people are waiting to get married is one aspect of it, or are just simply not getting married. But you can't make that money back up, right? And so if you've taken care of the kids, or you've been a part-time worker, and all of a sudden you get divorced at 55 and your husband's got a big income, but you don't, even if you are lucky enough to get half the assets, your quality of living will drop dramatically. So it isn't even just a matter of, I need to learn how to invest. You absolutely need to know where the assets are. That's just the first thing you need to do. And UBS did a study on this. They did a great job on looking at how women abdicate their financial responsibilities. By the way, Switzerland is one of the top countries along with Singapore. 73% of the women surveyed abdicate to a man. 73%. Brazil and Mexico were the lowest, around 46%. US and the UK were about 55% right in there. Millennials are actually abdicating at a faster rate than their moms are, which actually blew me away. Now, this was a survey of 3,000 women, so we have to, it wasn't 100,000 women. But it's, statistically, it's pretty significant.
Sorry, what is, maybe I'm stupid today. What does abdicate mean? Like, what is that? What are you talking about there?
No, please ask a question. I love it. No dumb questions. All good questions. Abdicate means that you defer the decision-making to a spouse, which is often a man, or to a father. And so that's, that's, or a brother, a man, just some sort of a man, because most women were not included in the conversation, whether on purpose or not. And so they don't feel confident. So they say, oh, my husband can do it better. He's smarter. He makes more money. And then when women get divorced, they find negative surprises, because men don't necessarily know better. They just flex. And sometimes they make bad decisions, which is, if they're the only ones doing it, we can't even really blame them, right? Yeah. I mean, if you voluntarily remove yourself from understanding the risk that your partner's taking with your investments, and something goes terribly wrong, you are also responsible.
And it doesn't have to be divorce either. It can be death.
No.
Our neighbor, she's with her husband for 50 years and he dies. She's got lots of life left. And she, on top of the devastation of losing your partner, now you have this humongous burden of, while you're in this, while you're grieving, trying to figure out how to make things work. And I can't imagine that amount of pressure. when you're grieving. Yeah.
No, it's not nice. And we can help women avoid it. They have everything that they need. It's just the willpower.
And a bit of
Yeah,
knowledge.
but see, the knowledge is what they can get. Like that's not in their way, right? The second you say, you raise your hand and say, I need a little help, a million people can help you.
Right.
But you have to be willing to ask for it. Once you ask for it, oh my gosh, it's there for you in so many different ways.
I find that it is very hard when you've lived 30, 40, 50 plus years being, again, as you say, either voluntarily or not in the shade and not necessarily growing that will to even know what's going on. Right. I mean, I can tell you that for me, I grew up in a family. I mean, we're talking about a few generations back, but I know of the generations that I knew, and I got to meet my great grandparents of all sides. I can tell you that they all kind of said, we don't have money, but everything was abundant, especially food. Everything was abundant. Okay. My grandfather, my dad's dad used to, they lived in a basement apartment with like hardly any windows. And he worked hard all the time. And he would come home once a month with his paycheck and go, whoever's home. They used to have friends over. I mean, we're Israeli, so friends are always over. And he'd say, whoever's here, let's go to the movies and to dinner.
Okay.
Right. And that paycheck would burn just like that. So every like we always say, like, it scratches our hand when we get money and we just need to spend it. And I was literally just talking about that with my sister last night. And we said, we have to be the first generation. We're all girls, so we're happy that it's the first generation of women as well. But we should be the first generation to break that pattern of just not knowing what to do with your money and not knowing how to invest, because she married her husband, and their parents, his parents, they didn't have money. They didn't necessarily have money, but they knew where to invest. They're now like, they have a bunch of, houses and apartments and things like that, and just land and stuff. And she goes like, they didn't. And there was a mom too, who was like, wore the pants, if I may. There's huge quotation marks here, but she was responsible for growing their wealth. And, we just looked at each other yesterday on the FaceTime, and we said, we have to break that pattern, because although we're trying very hard, there's so many things that we don't know, and connecting it to health. When I'm sitting here and I'm concerned about our financial situation, again, I can eat as much organic food as I want, and I can eat as healthy as I want. I'm not feeling well. I'm feeling stressed, and I'm feeling uncomfortable in my own skin in a way where I need to make sure that I can provide for my family in the long run.
First of all, we have to help women get away from the shame. All of us, ourselves, our own, and share that comment with as many people as possible. We are where we are. Let's just go forward. We cannot change what's come behind us, other than to learn why we got here, maybe, so we don't repeat the mistakes.
You mentioned before, kind of the way that you work with your clients, and saying that you kind of show them a bit of the future. And so immediately when you said the word future, I was like, Bitcoin and NFTs, because those seem to be the future of finance. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh my gosh. So excited about it. And the thing is, I'm very optimistic, and I'm a very positive person. And I think one of my super strengths is to say, okay, we're in a very difficult geopolitical environment right now, right? And you can't predict these things. And anybody that tells you they can predict it can't, right? We can look in past and we can try and extrapolate some things. But excluding an all-out nuclear war, which I hope is a small chance, let's just put that one aside. We are going to continue to have certain dynamics in society that are irrefutable. And Bitcoin and NFTs are one of those. These are drivers for an entire new paradigm for people. And it is so exciting. And I'm learning so much. It's funny. Somebody on Twitter said, Web3, the metaverse, right? It's the conundrum is that you can be so far ahead of the curve and so far behind it at exactly the same time. is you can dive in and start learning about it, and all of a sudden you know more than 90%, 99% of everybody around you, but you feel like you know 1% compared to everybody, what everybody else is talking about. It's so immense, and that of course can turn people off. But it is about society and community. And I'll just, because I know have a limited amount of time, but what excites me so much about just the blockchain technology, let's step back from Bitcoin, is that it removes the barriers for people to get into different types of either investment or passion projects. So you can fractionalize. So using an NFT is somewhat of an example, but I'm going to use it in a little bit different way. Instead of like a crypto punk or a Bored Ape, which are where you go buy in a pixelated NFT and you hope it goes up in price. There's a different strategy that's also happening where groups are going and buying, let's say, a masterpiece, and they're putting it into a trust so that for perpetuity, that painting must remain in the trust. But you can go buy fractional shares of that, let's say Monet. And all of a sudden, when you fractionalize something, fractionalize meaning you slice it up in little pieces, instead of having to come up with 45 million to buy a Monet, you might be able to spend 100 and have a sliver of the value of that Monet. And blockchain technology allows this to happen relatively easily. And so all of a sudden, if you are a passionate Renoir fan, and never in a million years ever would you have ever been able to have any kind of access to ownership, you can now. I mean, it's coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a super small amount of money. And you can then go to even a museum. Let's just say it's still going to be held at a museum. And you can look at that painting and you can sit there and say, I own a small piece of this painting. The joy it brings you isn't necessarily about the money.
Mm-hmm.
You can all of a sudden have access to things to just bring you some sort of joy. So that's using what I think is maybe a simple example. A more practical example, which is still finance and community related. We will see in the future a world where a community in Colombia can go out to a broader community and say, we need $10,000 to put a solar panel on our school. And we will save X amount of money by having the solar panel. And we will now not have the grid coming up and down all the time. Our kids will be able to go to school. And maybe we can even run a water pump with fresh water as well next to the school. But we need the initial investment of $10,000. And we know that what we're saving, if you give us $10,000 community, we can give you a payment back of 6% on your money. And it's backed by an asset, right? And it's energy. So it's not something, so nobody can just run off with the sun. You're not, it's kind of, it's these deals are done all the time. Pensions all the time pension funds will invest all of our money into wind farms, solar farms, because there's a very specific payback on these things. It's not complicated. And they tend to be depending on the renewable energy, 8 to 10% payback, right? It's not complicated, it's not sophisticated, and it's not speculative. So can you imagine a community goes out and says, anybody can buy whatever they can, but we come up with 10,000, and the whole entire community invests. Maybe one person does 1,000, another person does $30. I mean, doesn't, and then they get a coupon payment back, and now they've just funded their own school. They didn't need to bring in external funders for that. Does that make sense as an example of how
it does?
Blockchain, you can do this in a smart contract so that it's safe and secure.
Well,
and it's
I have to share a story about how secure it is, though. But Megan's gonna pee her pants, I'm sure. But we actually went into it a couple of years ago. I would say maybe 4 years ago by now.
Wow.
And I am supposed to be very rich right now. We'll leave it at that. I don't know.
Did you lose a key, or somebody stole something?
I lost it.
Yeah. Okay. You're right. You're right to bring up that point. When I say secure,
don't be a scatterbrain.
Secure in that it's trade. Well, yeah, no, this is what scares a lot of people. And this is where we have to be very careful about individual people understanding that they're vulnerable, and there's tons of scams around. wallets and things like that. And that is a very real issue. So, which is why I kind of took it back away from specifically Bitcoin, which I'm a fan of, and Ethereum, which I would own it. And I would tell almost everybody, not giving financial advice, but I think everybody should have some of that. How you do that, how you hold that, you need to think about that, how much you have, how much vulnerability, for sure. That needs to be done.
Yeah. Just that
So that's
education ahead of time, I think, is really important. I'm not going to get into it too much, but basically I was working with someone who knows more than most people I know about this. But it was just this one thing that was missed, that one little thing, and years later, he's like, check your coin, because we said it was just a long-term game. I'm going to put it away and I'm going to forget about it. And then he just texted me. He goes like, dude, you should be really rich right now. Like, check it out. And we searched everywhere. We had all the information, prior information, and that one last key that when we switched to another wallet, and after a couple of months of just digging through all the computers and everything, I was like, you know what? It's just money.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah, it was tough. It was really tough.
Really
and I didn't even go into calculating how much I should have right now, because I was like, that's just going to be too painful. But yeah.
Oh, that's tough. But just because I know that it's important for people listening that they understand the link for you guys and what you're trying to do, is there is an entire longevity economy that is coming, that is so massive that if you can just slightly put your body in front of it, you're just going to get run over by opportunity. And whether that's just purely investing in the longevity economy as a stock, like in an ETF, or if you want to be a business person and go, which you guys are doing, right? I'm reading this book called The Longevity Economy right now, which is, it's maybe a little bit outdated, but the only because this market's moving so quickly. The amount of people, so 50 plus consumers control 83% of household wealth. And between 2007 and 2061, they will hand down $53 trillion to their heirs. This is a US number. 30 trillion of this money is coming in the next 10 years, and chances are it's going to go into the hands of a woman first. So women will have now, for the first time, maybe ever, such a sizable amount of wealth in their own hands with which they can do philanthropical endeavors, with which they can fund campaigns for politicians. Look what's happening to women's rights in America. So, it doesn't even have to be that you're driven by more money. It could be a way to fund education for your grandchildren. So the money is astounding that's coming. If you just look at the 60-year-old and up age bracket, worldwide adult spending will reach $15 trillion by 2030. And the amount of 65-year-olds, something like a huge amount of people every day turn 65 in the US, and they're living longer, right? So they're living because of modern medicine, because slowly people are learning about taking care of their health. But what's going to happen to those people when they retire? If we look at Japan, the US is the only first world country that is not having that has a replacement rate, basically. So you need 2.1 children to keep your population growing at the minimum. Otherwise, if you don't have 2.1, you shrink on yourself. And of course, the reason governments don't want you to shrink on yourself is because you have less people working to support the older, right? That's the fear. And so I find it quite ironic, all of the debate in America around immigration, because actually that's just going to save our sorry ass in 15, 20 years. Not that I dismiss the importance of engaging with people on immigration. Everybody's experience is different if you live in Mexico or if you live in North Dakota. So I fully embrace how do you manage immigration so that there's a balance. But it's great irony that immigration in America will keep it going, like successfully.
I wanted to mention something that you actually said at the beginning, and you connected the companies that we're investing in and sustainability in general. And I think that's something that I'm very, it's very close to my heart in terms of a sustainable lifestyle in terms of ourselves and how we sustain our healthy lifestyle, and also for our surroundings. So our little town, our country, our the world. And I love that nowadays you do see more and more companies, and I'm talking about like finance kind of involved companies that are really dedicated to sustainability and to, stock markets in terms of kind of, making sure that we're putting our money where our mouths are. And so can you tell us a little bit more about how, what your view is on that, and how you navigate through that mess?
First of all, unfortunately, there's a lot more greenwashing going on than there's actually an effective strategy by the banks. A lot of them have jumped on the bandwagon. What I could say to you is there's a gentleman, Duncan Greer or Grierson. I apologize if I've gotten your name wrong. He's the founder of a company in the UK called Clim8, CLIM and an 8. Now, it's a UK company. I don't know if they are only taking money onshore UK, but I imagine they've got a broader goal to expand. But in any case, anybody listening could go to LinkedIn and follow him. And he's written some really good articles about some of this greenwashing and ESG and things like that. BlackRock is just a huge funder of dirty energy. Yet they spend millions on promoting strategies for sustainability. I mean, it's just awful. And a lot of funds are like that. So the activism is a big part. Thank you for bringing this into the topic. Activism is another way with your money you can change the world. You can, if you work for Google, if you work for Microsoft, if you work for Nestle's, right? Your money goes to, if you work for Nestle's, your money is going to rip down forests for palm oil, your pension money, right? So, you can, there's ways you can stand up to this and say, I don't want you to use BlackRock until they stop funding certain, have certain bad practices, or but you have to get informed. But money can be also a power for good. But it shouldn't also be knee-jerk reactions where you hear a headline and everybody goes all crazy. You do need to do the research. I mean, that goes without saying. But yes, the banks are realizing that they need to provide customers with legitimate avenues to align their profits with purpose. And that is a trend that's coming, but you do unfortunately have to be you have to be a smart consumer here. You need to ask, you need to dig a little bit more on this. But there are some really good efforts that are going that direction. But it's still, there's a little bit more greenwashing than I'm comfortable with. But it's an evolution. So, but yes, you have also in Yova is a Swiss firm.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get them to sponsor me, but they're not keen so far. Because I'm in such a position. I think I should be courted by all these firms. People come to me, where should I open a brokerage account? I mean, I've got so much influence on where people can take their money. So, yeah. So I don't have skin in the game. I want to see, other than if they sponsor a podcast, but I would only have people who are legitimately doing, good work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so Clim8, somebody to look at, follow them. They talk a lot about sustainable energy and things like that.
After listening to you about like being altruistic and using your money for like bettering the world, I just had a few things in my brain as you were talking about that. Like, I'm wondering like what percentage of the population actually does that, right? And I mean, when I grew up, we tithed at church, and that was our charity, right? And I think charity and activism are two separate things, and I think most people know about charity, but using your money towards activism and then tying it back to the health part is like, I mean, as I mentioned before, I was almost bankrupt. I know how, even in that state of almost bankruptcy, I was in my life at that time. I was in a really good place. I had great friends. I was in a job that I got to, see and work with people all the time in a good way. And like, I tell people I was so happy during that time, and I was so poor. So I'm trying to wrap all these things in of like, you know, you know, how much your wealth affects directly your health, mental health and physical health, and how when you start to have money, people who grew up with no money feel the need to kind of also normalize themselves down to where they feel comfortable as well, right? So if you grew up in a household that was making minimum, or, I would say middle class family America, bringing home somewhere between 40 and 60, maybe 90,000 if you have two people working. It's like, sometimes I feel like when I'm in Switzerland and I'm making tremendous amounts of money, I also get like, I feel sometimes guilty.
You feel guilty?
I definitely feel guilty. Like, I don't feel like I deserve that much money for the work that I'm doing. I mean, there's this whole mental game, but I also don't really use my money for kind of anything altruistic or like for advocacy or anything like that. It just kind of sits there, and it's kind of like, okay, I just make sure that I have enough money. I can fly home a couple times a year to see my family, but it's also difficult. I know I'm going on and rambling here a little bit, but it's also difficult for me to invest here as an American citizen, so there's a lot of things wrapped up in money and mental health and this kind of self-worth, and reflecting that self-worth, like kind of like getting rid of it. Like, okay, I kind of like, I can't be worth 5 million, let's get rid of it because I feel like more comfortable only being worth this much.
I mean, these are fascinating topics, ones that I'm kind of just myself exploring. And I know that Danna and I met through Alana, who reached out to me to, maybe do kind of, I just had her on the podcast, although I haven't published it yet. And that's kind of, I would say, her domain. But me as a person, I want to learn about that because I believe those are very powerful things happening in the background, especially for women. Now, I think where my coaching class comes into it is, I think if you can focus on things that make you feel confident and excited, and you can say, look, you can invest your money, and you can do it in such a way that you know that it might help you to do something impactful one day or do something impactful regularly. Maybe there's a charity that you'd like to donate money to every year. If you made 10% on your portfolio, you'd like to give 3% of that back. I mean, there's a million different ways to look at this. And that's something that, someone like me could kind of put some context around to take away that what you deserve. And then at any stage of your life, you can decide, oh, I grew out of that behavior. I now think I'm worth 10 million, and I'm still going to keep doing what I want to do for all of these really passionate, charities. Now, something else cool that I've come across that I'm going to be more active with is there's a company called eToro, and it's a European company. They do have a US outlet because I have to look at that for myself as well, being a US person. And they have what's called social profiles. Then there's a lot of women on the platform, and people show you their portfolio, what they're buying. I'm buying the semiconductor portfolio. I just did a post about semiconductors. Oh my God, I did it. I think I hit the bottom accidentally. Why I didn't buy it for myself that day. Anyway, the market rallied off that, but I'm a long-term investor, and I'm also know that things are very volatile right now. So I'm a little bit patient, but the semiconductor industry, I think, is going to move onshore in America. And I think that Intel and a lot of other domestic semiconductors are going to benefit because of the geopolitical situation happening in China and Taiwan and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so eToro, you can go see people's portfolios. You can see what they're doing. They show you their portfolios, and then they kind of have these little contests where your portfolio outperformed. And it's a bit of fun, but it's meant to be transparent. So it's not hidden and quiet. So then they have launched, the founder is seems to be very pro women and kind of also just social good. They've launched something called Good Dollar. And you can donate, and this is via, he's also got cryptocurrencies on the platform. You can donate to the Good Dollar token, and there's specific charities on there you can donate to, but they also have it as a universal basic income. So people that might need some universal basic income can apply for that. And then you can also give towards it. And it's kind of meant to be a circular kind of economy. When you're doing well, you give back. And when you need it, you take from it. And so you get these Good Dollar tokens, which obviously, in order for that to be successful, it needs to grow. So people have, kind of a value around these Good Dollar tokens. But that's another really cool way of tying just pure investing with, do I want to, now I've had a really good year, and they've kind of got it laid out for you. So they're making it easy. Let me just put a little money in and donate some of my pure real world profits. And I'm going to donate $100 to this charity in the Good Dollar program.
Yeah.
So it's a nice, again, very entrepreneurial. People are understanding that these things really resonate, especially with women and especially with Gen Z and millennials. So I think if you have a platform like that where both people are sharing their portfolios to give you ideas and inspirations and just this ongoing learning, and then you can also have the social aspect. You can go see, oh, there's a really cool education charity in Bolivia or Ecuador or whatever. I don't know where. And it's just kind of cool. I think that's a nice way forward. Takes us out of the picture a little bit, it removes the ego a little bit. And it kind of, I don't know, packages it in a bit nicer way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's really some cool stuff out there.
Cool. Danna, did you have some more questions?
No, honestly, I feel healthier already just discussing this, because I think that I definitely need to know more. I'm definitely one of those people who, like I said, with generations before me, it's just a whole broken relationship with finance. And I think that's something that everyone needs to learn more about, and everyone needs to have a healthy relationship with. And, for me, I find that when I do have money, I also make sure to spend it very quickly. But I go above and beyond with charities and just giving to people who need. And we end up not having enough because I decided to give this random person like $500 all of a sudden or more. And so that's also, something to really kind of be aware of and be careful about. So thank you, Shannon. This was really, really, enlightening and fun. And, there are definitely some words that Megan and I will kind of like go and Google afterwards to check out, or just join one of your sessions to figure out. No, not your fault.
So
not
sorry.
Your fault.
Can I just end on a really positive note that I think you two will love? Do you know one of the biggest growth sectors coming? It's already happening. And I need to also blog about this to tie it to specific investment strategies. But it's your sector. It's personal growth. It's going to be wearables. It's going to be apps that help people. So we just need to find avenues to allow people to invest in those strategies, because it is exploding. Because we are having an awakening, even though it doesn't feel like it right now with what's happening into the Ukraine. Mental health, physical health. I'm going to do an episode, hopefully, about a guy who says you can download your brain onto a computer chip and live forever. Now, I don't know that that's what we want to do, but that's people are out there working on this technology. And so it's like, oh my God. I heard that at a drinks thing a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, well, I need to have that. We need to talk about that. Like, is that okay? Is that right? Do you want to live forever? I don't know. Maybe people do.
And
but you know what I mean? Like, you're going like this. I'm also like, oh.
No, but what if you don't? What if you're like a computer chip and then you're like, okay, I'm ready to die now. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, good question. I'll ask him that. That's a good question. Maybe I'll put it out there before I interview him and have everybody else contribute to the questions. Oh, that would be really cool, actually.
Yeah. Oh, I'll have so many questions.
No, but that weird topic aside, the whole industry is exploding. I mean, exploding, and that will be investable. And also in the blockchain, you will find more and more opportunities that way. They're coming at they're higgledy-piggledy, but there's so many cool things coming from an investment into your space. And I think you would be excited about that, right? If you could invest in an ETF, which was doing mental health apps that help people with their eating, with exercise, with managing diabetes, all of this stuff, you guys would be like, hell yeah, I get that space. I want to invest in that
Yeah.
space.
I would definitely invest in that. And Megan, we need to start thinking about that app too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm a gadget person. I love gadgets, and what I hear you're saying, it's like one of those, why did I not think about this sooner of, adding information like this. So it's on one, I'm trying to think about like gadgets and apps that will help people get where they want to go, right? But on the other hand, it's like you talking about like, well, not just the gadget, like go to the company and say, wow, this company is doing really great things. I want to invest in this company because this, and it's going to, by me investing in it, not only that, because now I want people to use it because it's going to be such great technology, but I never really connected the dots there. So I'm happy that you just said that, because now my brain is on fire. I'm like, okay,
that's my job. That's my only job. I've done my job. And let me tell you this, your space, the personal growth and health and wellness space, is the yoga wear of the noughties, the 2000s, right? When everybody's Lululemon, right? When all of these things, personal health and wellness as an economy is exploding, and I tie that back into the amount of people aging. You guys, you just barely have to put yourself in front of this, but you need to click your brain over, not just for your business, but for your investment strategies. Where are your friends spending their money? That's what I tell everybody. Lululemon was profitable 16 years in a row. It's been one of the best and most consistent stock investments you could have made. And you know somebody, I guarantee everybody listening knows somebody who's bought a freaking $100 pair of Lululemon yoga pants and never did a fucking yoga class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So you need to think, I see Lululemon everywhere. Let me buy that stock. Yeah, get something back.
Yeah.
So look at all these companies and go Google it. Is that a stock? Can I invest in that company or in the sector? I mean, I much prefer women invest in a sector, especially if you don't have experience, right? But hey, if you see a company and you absolutely love it, by all means, throw some money in that. Just don't go wild and throw your whole portfolio in it. But I think you should own one or two stocks individually, because you're really like in the game, that's your learning. That's your in there. So.
And you actually mentioned Innova in Yova. They added the in lately, right? It was Yova before.
I know. Yeah.
I don't know why. It's a tongue tie now, but Yova is actually doing exactly what you're talking about, which I really think you should sit on their ass about sponsoring.
I should.
Because
Yova, what's your deal?
I know, right? But they're in Yova. If you're listening, seriously, dude. But
if you're listening, really,
I mean, right?
Wealth Alchemist wants to send you business.
But I mean, I don't know, Megan, if you know them, but they're really awesome because they are a company who will deal with your portfolio and will play around with your money. But the first thing that you do is you take a questionnaire and you choose, do I want to invest in green energy? Do I want to invest in, plant-based protein? Do I want to invest in all of these things? And they are really focused on green technology in a way. So again, I don't know how much, I'm hoping they're doing the homework for us. And again, it might be the case of like, okay, you guys deal with my money and do whatever, and I trust you. But at the same time, I'm kind of feeling like if I go in that route, which I've been on my husband's ass about it for years now. But if we go that route, I would feel very comfortable knowing that they are dealing with companies that I want to have my name behind, and not like the Coca-Colas and Nestle's and whatever, where I'm feeling like, well, great. It's like having a YouTube channel and having them pay me for ads. And then I have a McDonald's ad before I'm talking about, eating healthy. Makes zero sense. Right. So that kind of contradiction within myself, I'm like, I'm not going to go that route. I need to know that my money is well spent and my dollar or franc or whatever is actually making a difference in a world where I want to live in the future. So that's really, really important in my eyes, for sure.
Yeah. Always. I mean, it's nothing wrong with having people third-party manage your money, so take your stress out of it. If you really don't want to do that, but with all the rails that you set up there, perfectly acceptable. Nothing wrong with that. But you should do an analysis at least once a year to make sure that you should just not like they told me they're going to do this, I'm going to believe them. They probably will be doing that. But if they don't, you're the one that will suffer,
Yeah.
right? So just having a little check-in, it doesn't have to be anything super detailed. But again, in my consulting classes, I show people how to look for over-concentration. You have 8 funds, and then you look at how many of those 8 funds own Apple, Microsoft, and Tesla. And all of a sudden you realize that you've got 30% of your entire portfolio in Tesla.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of things that I show women. And it's really easy. Once you learn it, you can't unlearn it. Then people run away and they go and they look at the Morningstar fact sheet. They're like, oh, it's kind of cool. Like you, even though you're like, oh shit, I own a lot of Shell or BP, whatever it is, but then, you're like, okay, I get it. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah. So you do have to check in occasionally. That's, I guess, my point.
Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today. You've given us some really good food for thought. What's the best way for our listeners to find you?
So I have a website which hosts all of my podcasts, and that is www.the-wealth-alchemist.com. So you can listen to the podcast directly from the website. My podcast, The Shot Caller Podcast by Shannon Sagawe, is also available on Spotify, Google, Amazon, Apple. So you can also listen there. Love it if you would subscribe and follow. And then we have an education section on the website, which has got the courses and also the coaching session. And then I just occasionally will do blogs about certain topics. I make extremely silly TikToks. If you want to see me, I am against boring banking and boring bankers. I try to teach in my weird sort of way. In fact, I just did a really interesting TikTok on Starbucks, teaching you about how they get to keep about 10% every year of all the money that goes onto those digital cards. It's about $141 million a year. So if you're a Starbucks shareholder, you get they 10% of that money goes unused, just right back into the company. So I talk about those kind of things just so you can, just like really stuff you didn't think about. So follow me on TikTok if you want to be entertained. I humiliate myself on the regular.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shannon.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Hey, you're still listening. Great. Okay, now I can tell you about my 12-week goal setting session. So in this 1-hour session, I'm going to help guide you through a powerful process inspired by the best-selling book, The 12-Week Year. I know. Everybody at this time of the year starts to think about year-long goals. And I would argue that year-long goals are really hard to contextualize. What is going to be happening in a year from now? You have no idea. But 12 weeks gives you a little bit better understanding because you kind of already have your calendar booked out for the next 12 weeks, kind of know what's going to be going on. So if you can focus your goals on the next 12 weeks, you can make some really big actionable steps towards your long-term vision. So in this 1-hour session, we do talk about long-term vision. We talk about where you want to be. We talk about what your 5-year, 10-year, 3-year, all those goals are. But that's only a brief part. We know, we see the long distance view, but let's break that down. And then we get into the 1 to 3 strategic 12-week goals that are going to get you to those long-term vision. Then we're going to put that into a really cool action plan with like checklists and timing and all that jazz to make sure that you are clear and that you have accountability to get those goals done. And then that's not it. Then we are going to tackle your roadblocks because you have roadblocks. So we're going to tackle those roadblocks. We're going to create a plan to overcome them. So when you start to self-sabotage, what you can do to get around those roadblocks. Okay, so if this is interesting for you, it is only 1 hour of your time and it's only 45 Swiss francs. I host this gig over on Fiverr, but I'm also going to put a link down in the show notes. So if you're interested, hit me up.